Hey guys, Dr. Justin Marchegiani here. I'm going to bring a quick little study to you here. I'll do a more in-depth podcast on this later this week. But can exercise inhibit or make you less fertile? So we'll talk about it from a female perspective today. But yes, from a man perspective, I'll bring that later on as well. But yes, fertility and exercise do have a correlation. So we'll dive into that topic here in just a minute. Before we do, please smash that like button. Love to see your comment down below. And if you enjoy it, please feel free and subscribe and share with family and friends. All right, so can too much exercise hurt your fertility? So one study here, I'll put it down below here, really good study here. I'll put the link down below. Women who exercise vigorously on most days, right? Most days, more than 2 hours per week, had a 3.2 higher risk of fertility problems. Here's the reference here down below. This is the two studies here that I looked at here that saw an increase in infertility with more vigorous exercise. So they were talking about greater than 5 times per week. I think greater than 5 hours per week. And this is an odds ratio. And so essentially imagine you have 100,000 people, imagine, and they're grouped by BMI, so it's similar weight. Imagine 1,000 people being infertile, and then the higher exercise group being at 3.2x that. So let's say maybe they're at 3,200, right? So you could say, 3.2x higher than that group. So that's kind of how an odds ratio looks at things. Now they saw exercise to exhaustion was at 2.3x more likely. So actually a little bit less than the lighter activity that was more frequent. So really interesting on that. And again, this is people that did it more than 3 times per week. Let me kind of break it down for you. So here was kind of the baseline, right? So this is greater than 5 hours per week. We saw the greatest chance of infertility. So fertility dropped as weekly intense exercise increased, which is quite fascinating if you ask me. Again, it's all about intensity, right? And the thing is why? Because hormones, they help deal with stress. They help deal with inflammation. They're prioritizing either building you up or dealing with stress and inflammation. They're either anabolic, building you up, or they're catabolic, breaking you down. And so if you're adding too much breakdown with exercise, right, especially at that 5-hour mark, that's going to break you down more. And then if your hormones are too busy trying to repair from that exercise, then where does the fertility come in, right? There's not enough hormonal reserves to deal with the fertility aspect. So intense daily workouts may disrupt hormones and ovulation. Why? Because when you're inflamed, guess what happens? Your body's going to take progesterone and it can use it to make cortisol, right? So it's part of that whole stress situation is progesterone can go downstream to make cortisol. Again, fertility is sensitive to energy balance. So if you're taking a lot of nutrients in and those nutrients are stockpiled, let's say fatty acids, cholesterol, building blocks, and that's there to help build back your hormones, but now you use it in a catabolic way, that's going to be a problem. And again, women that were more lean and athletic, right? These are the women that were most likely to actually be amenorrhea. They would lose their period. They would be infertile. They'd be much more of the ectomorph, the skinnier, leaner, dancer, basketball player kind of body type, right? They would be at a higher risk of infertility. So what's the solution? Stick to less than 2 hours a week if you're doing vigorous exercise. Emphasize moderate activity, walking, yoga, light strength training. This is all about where you're at from a fertility standpoint. If you're feeling great, you have great periods, I'm not really worried about this per se. This kind of recommendations that come in when my female patients are having fertility issues, then we're going to dial in. If not, we're looking at the big 3 questions I always ask my fertility patients is, how do you feel after exercise? Do you feel better than when you started? Can you emotionally repeat it again? That's the second question. And how do you feel later on that day, that next morning? Do you feel overly tired or sore, hit by a bus, or do you feel okay? As long as you're answering positively to that, that's a good sign. Now, I do like the data that more than 5 hours, right? That's a good sign. So now my new recommendations are going to be, let's keep it under, right? And ideally, if you're every other day, 3 to 4 times a week, try to keep it under that 3 to 4 hour mark. I think that's pretty good, but make sure you're answering positively to those questions. How you feel? Can you emotionally repeat? That tells me how depleted you feel. And then also, how do you feel that next day? That gives me a good sign. Now, why this is happening is because exercise inherently is catabolic, but your body's going to respond with an anabolic hormonal boost, right? Testosterone and growth hormone, women get that too. And if we're breaking down too much, it's going to potentially throw off fertility. And so this study here looked at the fact that we have this 3.2 increase when we start to go over this 5 hours a week. And then it's 2.3 on the high intensity, but that's, 3 hours or more. Typically, if we're doing high intensity though, we're doing a Tabata, we're doing 4, maybe 8 minutes. And so we're never going to hit that 2 to 3 hour mark, if you will, right? Because we're never going to go that long on the high intensity. I think high intensity is great because you can do it quick, short, and it's not so much time where you're getting into that big catabolic state. Plus, you get a nice growth hormone boost from that. So I'll come back with a little bit more content on this topic here. But if you're dealing with a fertility issue, exercise can be important. Why? Because most fertility issues have a PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome component. That means there's insulin resistance. Exercise is very helpful at helping insulin resistance. How and why? It's going to help burn up that extra glucose in your bloodstream. You can test your blood sugar, and you can see just moving. You're going to see a big drop in your blood glucose in that first hour or two after a meal. Secondly, it's going to help squeeze out that glycogen. So it's going to give you more glucose reserves for dealing with the extra carbohydrate and sugar coming in. And then also you're going to get a nice bump in your anabolic hormones, and it's going to make you more insulin sensitive. And so because PCOS is such a big component, I don't want anyone to read this study and say, I got to be lazy, I got to be lethargic. No, it's all about the excess. It's about the excess. And do you fit into that category where you're doing more than 5? Answer my 3 questions positively. And again, still use exercise as a good tool. If you have infertility, that's where you want to dial down to the more moderate, more gentle things. Test your blood sugar after a meal and answer my 3 questions positively. How do you feel? Better after your workout than before? How do you feel emotionally? Can you repeat it? And then that next day, how do you feel? Hit by a bus, or do you feel okay? All right, guys, Dr. Jay signing off here. If you need more support on the hormonal side and you want to dive in, I see lots of infertility cases all the time. We get to the root cause of them, and exercise and diet and lifestyle play a very important foundational role. If you want more support on that, there'll be a link down below where you can reach out to my staff and team. All right, guys, have an awesome day. Take care, y'all.